Next, we'll look at defining wheel loads. So I'll click on the section and the icon right next to Edit Wheel Loads. So similar to point loads, I have a very similar configuration of how the point loads can be entered and with relation to the different types of joints and free edges in your project. Please review the point load entry video to determine and understand this graphic here. We have 4 different load types for wheel loads. A single axle with 2 wheels, which if I show you down here is just what it sounds. One axle of a truck or forklift, etc., with 2 wheels, each with the same magnitude. A single axle with 4 wheels, which has, again, one axle with 2 pairs of loads or 2 pairs of tires or wheels. 2 axles, 4 wheels. So this is where you have 2 separate axles with some distance B between them, with each one a different load, F1 for the front axle, F2 for the second axle, and finally 2 axles, 8 wheels. So this configuration, you'll have 2 separate axles. The first axle has 2 pairs of loads, all characterized by the F1 magnitude. The second axle, all characterized by the F2 magnitude. So in the case of my project here, I think I'll just have a single axle with 2 wheels. That's probably the most prevalent. And let's define where this loading will be. So for sure, slab center, but I'll also want to have my wheels crossing over the control joints and the construction joints. And there's some discussion whether or not you'll have wheel loads crossing over a free edge of the slab. Again, please see the point load video to discuss what is a free edge and whether or not your loading applies there. But we also have an extra option here, which is if you have a wheel crossing over a gateway, if you have a doorway or ramp where a truck is entering or exiting your facility, then this case may apply. So let's go ahead and define our wheel loads. Let's say, for example, that these are going to be 10,000 pounds per wheel. So this, please note, this is the wheel load, not the axle load. So this is a 20,000 pound axle as I've defined it. With the distance between these wheels, let's say it's 36 inches. And a wheel pressure, perhaps we'll say that this is a pneumatic tire with 180 PSI wheel pressure. So that defines the magnitude and location of the loads. Now we'll go into the load position. I went through a similar discussion in the point loads, but it's important that we think through where these loads will occur with relation to our joints and edges of the slab. So Y prime is dictated as the distance between the edge of a wheel to a joint or an edge of the slab. X prime is a distance from the edge in the opposite direction, perpendicular to a joint or slab edge. So for interior joints, and especially with forklift type loading, I always use a 0-inch offset because that is the most realistic, that we anticipate that these trucks will be crossing over your construction joints and similarly crossing over the saw cut joints as well. So I will always leave these as 0 unless you have a configuration where you know for certain that your forklift or truck loading will not be crossing those joints or will be a certain distance away from those joints, in which case you would enter that, let's say, as 48 inches away. But in this case, I'll go back to 0. Next, we have the free edge. So this is where we have a condition with a gateway, for example. And so we want to allow this truck to come in and out of the building. This is also, again, assuming that we do have a true free edge condition. So just as a reminder, once again, I did go through this in my point load slide, but I just want to remind folks, if you haven't seen it, if you have a turn down, like what's shown here, this is not a free edge condition from the standpoint of the software. However, on this left-hand detail, if your slab comes and simply terminates right up against the exterior of the building with a true flat soffit, there's no turn down of the slab, then that is considered a free edge condition that we would want to consider in the software. Okay, so now I can go ahead and use again this left arrow at the top or clicking the back button at the bottom right to go back to the load input screen.